What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is 444 Philly Fan Podcast with Tim Talks Philly. We are the Broad Street Boys podcast, going live every Tuesday and Thursday for the most part, talking Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers, getting out all the daily news. And, also check out our individual channels where we will be posting videos of instant Philly news. Last week with the trade deadline, I posted a video of Matisse Thybulle. We did just record our first podcast episode, so make sure to go check that out on both of our channels after this one. So basically, we all know that the Eagles lost in the Super Bowl 38-35 to the Kansas City Chiefs. We did have a 10-point lead going into halftime, but we thought that, as Philly sports fans, it has to be recapped. It has to be talked about. This is the biggest team in this city, and the Eagles, they hold a different kind of love to certain fans, and pretty much every Philly sports fan loves the Philadelphia Eagles more than any other sports team in any city. So we thought that it is our justice to talk about the ending of a great season. Unfortunately, we did come up a little bit short.
Yeah, I've officially let my tears dry up. It took a lot of time. Took a lot of time to recover from it. Was quicker than I expected though. I guess I've had some time to learn how to lose in championships after the Phillies. Um, but yeah, really just a heartbreaking loss. Um, a lot of opinions out there about how it ended with that holding call. I'm sure we'll get into that, but initial thought is just regardless of whether it was the right call, wasn't the right call, it's tough. It is tough to end the game on a penalty where as soon as you hear that flag was thrown, wow, like there's a little bit less than 2 minutes left, but that's it. That's the game. They're just gonna milk it, kick the field goal, and we're gonna have no time. So I mean, just a heartbreaking loss. One of them where you sit there and you're like, wow, like I thought 35 points would have done the job. Um, just really a tale of two halves. People after the first half talking about, oh, is the parade going to be Wednesday or Thursday? Oh, the debate of the city, and then all of a sudden we're sitting there watching the Chiefs storm the field. So it's a tough one to handle. But we'll recap all that, but still a lot to be excited about it with this team going forward. Maybe not the right thing to think about right now. Still gonna take some time to recover from everything, but that's what we're here for. We're all getting through this together.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, three championships in this city and three L's. And I'm not even the biggest of Union fans. I'll support them. They do have Philadelphia in front of their name, but man, three championships where some of them were minutes away from winning. I mean, the
I
Union
mean,
were 2 minutes away from winning the whole thing.
I was gonna say this in our live stream that we did earlier when you were talking about it. I mean, what's even worse than being in three championships and losing all three was there was a lead. There was a lead in every single one of them. Phil's were up 2-1. Union had multiple leads in that game. Eagles were up 10 at halftime. So not only were you losing the championship, but at some point you were sitting there thinking, wow, we're about to have a parade. Three different times you're like, there's a very good chance we're going to be on Broad Street, and we weren't. And it's hard. It's hard to live. It's different from just losing. This one stings a little bit different because I was talking to somebody about that Phillies. Hey, yeah, you were up 2-1, but you went into game 6 knowing like, this could be it. You had a little bit more time to prepare for it. I was still sitting there thinking about the Rihanna halftime show by the time this game was getting a little tough to handle. So I mean, it came at us quick. It's really hard. You want to look back at like, man, we really dominated in that first half, still making mistakes. We made plenty of mistakes in that first half and still managed to come out with a 10-point lead. It's always going to sting a little bit more when you blow a lead. Ask Atlanta. They're still sick. So I mean, it's really hard to recover from something like that, but you gotta at some point.
Yeah, look, the one thing that I can say about losing championships. It only does, for the most part, make you better as a team, especially with the Phillies, who have contracts for until I'm 30,
Yes. Hmm.
and the Eagles now with Jalen Hurts, who's going to get the bag, with AJ Brown, with Devontae Smith, with this O line, this defense. Like, you have a solid 3 to 7 year window with both teams personally that they have a solid shot of winning one, if not more, eventually within
Hmm.
the next few years.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say that with the other two teams that play right across the street in the Flyers and the Sixers. And then, in my opinion, I think the Union are going to take the whole thing this year.
Hmm.
Already put some money on that. But,
There you go.
you
Yeah, I
know,
mean,
it,
you look at this Eagles. Biggest thing coming out. We did just talk about our free agents coming up, but yeah, Hertz is. This is coming into assuming that Hertz is getting re-signed by us. We are. It's a matter of what money, obviously, but you're getting your most important player back next year on each side of the ball. Jalen Hurts and Hassan Reddick. That's a great start. I mean, that's when you're looking at why this team was so. The story on offense is Jalen Hurts, and the story on defense is Hassan Reddick. So a lot of people are like, oh, a 1 year wonder. Like, no, like nobody thought we were going to be good this year. We were building for next year. So I think like it's tough. It's never easy to get back after going to the Super Bowl. So there's no guarantees. But we're sitting here like, look, we got to the Super Bowl on the year where we were supposed to just be, hey, go win a playoff game. So I think there's a lot to look forward to with this team. Um, but yeah, we'll have to see what moves they make to try and make a push next year. But for now, I guess all we can look at is what happened last Sunday.
yeah. And look, 35 points in a Super Bowl game. I mean, most points ever in a loss. You had Jalen Hurts breaking the rushing record, the rushing touchdowns record. He played phenomenally on the ground and through the air. And Eagles fans out there, if you had any doubts about Jalen Hurts coming into the season, they should be gone. We have a legitimate MVP caliber Super Bowl potential winning quarterback in our system who's only 24 years old.
And I guarantee those doubts would have been gone. You said they definitely should be. I guarantee you those doubts would have been gone if there was a minute and a half left when Jalen Hurts got that ball. So he had played such a great game. He won Philly over, and it's awesome to see, and I'm excited to see what he does moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, in the game alone, he was phenomenal. All season, he's been phenomenal. He's he is the guy. I mean, that mentality, that the Mamba mentality esque that Jalen Hurts carries on the field. It it's a crime that people still blame him. There's some people out there that blame him for the fumble, and like that's the reason why we lost the game. It's not. It really isn't. We still went into halftime with a 10-point lead, which has never been blown, except for the Atlanta game against the Patriots. It hurts. It sucks. I get that, but you cannot blame Jalen Hurts. That man put it all on the line. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes, and this is one of those cases where, just like LeBron in 2016, the losing player could have easily won the MVP of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it doesn't happen often, if at all, but Jalen Hurts, had to have been second in that,
Mm-hmm.
MVP.
It's only happened once before where the losing team had
Yeah,
the MVP. But I mean, yeah, you said it. I mean, he balled out. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes, which he's the best quarterback in the league. Being able to go up on that stage and play that well, face matched up against him, like that's really really cool. Um, but yeah, it's sickening because the reason you lost that game was because of the poor defensive performance, and it's just something that hasn't been an issue. It's been something where, you know, we're knocking multiple quarterbacks out of the game the 2 weeks before because of how good our 4-man pass rush is. We make it to the Super Bowl, and next thing you know, we're on a slip and slide and can't touch the quarterback. It was one of those things where you really sat back and looked at like, wow, like this is. If you would have gave me 10 guesses on how this game would have ended up, yeah, maybe one of them is Patrick Mahomes balls out and beats you, but honestly, that's not what happened. Yeah, give him credit. He did amazing for the situation he was in with, his ankle. I mean, who knows what he got shot up with, but we know it worked.
Yeah,
It's, he did well, but that would have been the situation when people say if you lost that game, it's because Patrick Mahomes goes out and does a job. And that's just not the case. The defense just really underperformed, and it's a shame. You wish you could be mad at them, but it's just wrong time to have a bad game, and it sucks. Wish little things that happened differently, which we'll get into, that would have gave them a chance, but ultimately, congrats to the Chiefs for getting the job done.
yeah. I mean, they still had to come back. They played on the same field that we did. The holding call sucked. Obviously, I mean, in my opinion, you give Jalen Hurts a minute and whatever left on that clock, down three, we at least tie that game up. And we're what could have happened. We could have went down that field. You get us to within the 20-yard line with one timeout left, with 30 seconds left. You can't tell me Jalen Hurts isn't scrambling out of that pocket to go to that end zone, and you know that he's going to do anything in his power to get in that end zone. But defense was as Tim just said, defense was playing out bad. 38 points. Obviously you got that field that both sides were complaining about, but Reddick, 16 and a half sacks. He added 2.5 more in the playoffs. Hargrave, 11 sacks. Brandon Graham, 11 sacks. Sweat, 10 plus sacks. Not one of them touched the quarterback. That has not happened all year. There was a stretch of games where we had 6+ sacks every game for like 5 straight weeks. We had 70 sacks on the year in the regular season. You can't tell me that field didn't play that much of a factor where, you got to the quarterback and it worked. And you made him feel the pressure and he would throw a bad ball or he would just get sacked. And, does that have something to do with how well the pass defense was all year? I'm sure it did, obviously. I mean, when the ball is not floating in the air and it's on the ground and the quarterback's on the ground along with it, that plays a factor. You didn't need Slay and Bradbury and Maddox, who, Maddox didn't play great. He was out of position sometimes. He got cooked on both of those plays where they just flip-flopped the field and threw that pass to Kadarius Toney. Mm-hmm. And then they threw the other one to 24. I don't even remember his name. But it sucks.
Moore, right? Sky Moore?
Yeah, Sky Moore. It just sucks that, that field played that much of a factor in a losing effort where you put up 35 points. You proved everybody wrong. All the doubters that were saying the Eagles are frauds, they're not. I mean, we put up 35 points in a Super Bowl. We were, maybe a good field away from winning. I don't know. I'm not going to blame it on the field, but there's definitely some.
There's little factors. I mean, and you mentioned the 38 points. I'm giving a lot of this to the defense. They really only let up 24 points. I mean, you had a fumble recovery, which it was early in the game. There was, you still were getting, it wasn't like it was a first down. You were giving the ball back to Pat Mahomes. And then, and then all that. Jalen Hurts still went down and scored right after. But I mean, that punt return, I think that was the jaw-dropping moment of the game. There was 2 moments. I could consider 3 if you want to consider the Jalen Hurts fumble. But for me, there was 2 big moments where, like, everyone's jaw just kind of dropped, and you were like, I can't believe this was happening. It was that punt return and the Mahomes scramble that went for like
Yeah.
20 some yards. It was really just like your jaw dropped, and you said, wow, I cannot believe this is happening. The Mahomes one was just like, I can't believe my man's is still running. I was incredibly frustrated. I knew at the moment I got to double check to see who was chasing him down. You're in the Super Bowl, dude. I can't believe nobody laid out for him. They were arm's length away from him and just slowed down. Like, come on. First of all, I'm never trying to take a guy out of the game, but you already know he's got a bad ankle. A leg tackle could take him out or make it a little bit more uncomfortable for him. But other than that, you're just taking the guy down instead of letting him run another 15 yards. That was a huge play where you're just sitting there like, I cannot believe this guy on a bum ankle just outran our defensive lineman. Like, it was one of the tougher things to sit there and watch. And then the punt return was just awful effort, and it's something you can't let happen in the biggest stage. So there's the field, there's the call, there's this, there's that. But I think the Eagles players after the game handled it the way they should have been. They said, listen, there's things that didn't go our way, but we did not play our best game, and we lost this game, which is what happened. And I consider myself to be a biased fan a lot of the times, but after that game, I sat there and I'm like, that call sucked. It hurt. It was an awful way to end a game. But I'm not going to sit here and blame the refs and say that was the reason we lost the game. It's not. We just didn't come out.
Game can't happen.
Won a lot of games this year, and a lot of them we played really, really well. That wasn't one of them. So,
no. Defensively, it was not.
Yeah.
It was probably our worst performance all year defensively.
Yeah.
Because even in the closer games that we won this year, defense still only allowed, 16 points against the Colts, 17 points against the Cardinals, and we won both of them. They were ugly wins, but look, you hold them to 4 touchdowns instead of 5.
Yeah.
We win that game.
Yeah.
It
hasn't happened a lot this year. I mean, your real only bad games were what? Against, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers. They technically ran up a good score on us, but that was a little different. That was more them coming back and, towards the end. I mean, Jordan Love came in, so that wasn't something I consider as much. But yeah, it hasn't happened a whole lot, and it's tough having it. If it was against anyone, I'd expect it to be Patrick Mahomes to do it to us. But it was definitely tough to let it slip at that point. But when recapping this game, I mean, I guess we can start with Jalen. I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but like his performance and kind of what it means going forward for him. One of the biggest things coming out of this now is what is his contract going to look like. I think if you're going to do anything for yourself, it's not all about what you do during the season. What he was able to do in the playoffs. Obviously, he wasn't doing too much those first couple of games. People were wondering about his shoulder, but it ultimately came down to he didn't need to do anything because we whooped up on him so bad. Defense played really, really well. Run attack was so good. But he came out in the Super Bowl and he balled out, and I think he just earned himself a big paycheck.
Yeah, for sure. And he deserves it. Man lost 2 games all year as the starting quarterback. And funny enough that, both of them had questionable calls.
Both of them had questionable calls. I mean, you had the face mask on Goddard. Come on. I mean, now I'm just thinking about this now. Geez, you have Quez Watkins, a major part of, 2 of Jalen Hurts' losses in the year. I mean, the fumble against Washington and then that drop pass. Oh my goodness, man. You're trying to make a name for yourself. And he came out. I think watching his press conference after, him talking to the media, he owned up to a lot of it. He said he wasn't himself this year, and it was a lot of mental stuff. So I understand these guys are people, and they got stuff going on. But man, that hurts. He was supposed to come in and be a dog this year, and for him to have 2 of arguably the biggest errors in Jalen Hurts' 2 losses this year. I mean, that hurts.
Yeah, for sure.
Nothing Jalen can do about it at that point. I mean, he's putting the ball in his hands.
Yeah, just keep running. He didn't even need to dive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was a perfect throw. And, man, just if there was one person that I really wish that we could have won that Super Bowl for, it's honestly Jalen Hurts. I mean, the kid after going through what he went through all off season with, not even all off season, the last 3 years, you know, people hating the pick. I'm not even gonna lie. I was one of them. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand it at the time, and I thought it was a bad pick. He comes in week 14 or 16, whatever it was, against either the Packers or the Saints. He wins, and then he goes into the next year, and now he's the full start. He's the full time starting quarterback. He goes 9-8. We go to the playoffs. He gets destroyed by Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, and people are still in question. He comes out this year. We start 8-0. The only one loss in the whole regular season that he had was against Washington, and that terrible face mask non call, and then you go all, and then he gets hurt, loses the MVP because I don't know why. I mean, the man lost one game all regular season, but and the team obviously could not win without him. But he just made himself. If he would have won that game, he would have been a Philly legend. And look, I think that there will be multiple times in his career. I hope that he gets to show us why he is getting paid the amount that he is going to get paid. Going back to how this whole thing started, his contract is going to be a big contract, and it's mainly because of this year, and he knows that. And the Super Bowl game was just even more, you know, showing to why he deserves to be among the league leaders in contract. Like, he deserves it. And he's played better than 90% of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He's done more than 90% of the quarterbacks in the NFL today. I mean, not many players can say that they've been to a Super Bowl. And not many players can say, I went toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes and I outplayed him. And my defense kind of failed me.
Yeah, I mean, like you, everything you said, he's this his whole entire journey. It really would have been cool for them to get it for him, but either way, I know, this this is still gonna be good for the team. I mean, they're coming out of this hungry now. I mean, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, like a lot of these, like I'm sure Hassan Reddick is fired up right now. I mean, he's beefing with Brian Baldinger on Twitter right now because he's out here like talking about how he was beat in the game when he's like, you just did a video on the turf, so he's mad about the turf or the grass. He wants to go back out there and show that he can go and be the best defensive player on a Super Bowl winning team.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of guys that are going to come out of this motivated, and I think no better guy than Jalen Hurts to have a chip on his shoulder. He's going to come out. I've never seen a guy improve more in one season than Jalen Hurts have, and if there's any more room to go up, I'm sure he's the guy that's gonna find it. Um, so I'm
it was
excited to see what that brings in the next season. But yeah, I think in terms of a contract extension, I'm hoping he kind of is like, oh, maybe him and Howie can work something out to where he's going to benefit while still being able to have a somewhat team friendly deal. I'm usually not a big,
thing.
yeah, I'm not a big fan of giving quarterbacks too much money. I mean, I'm sorry, you don't see it too often. I mean, Mahomes is probably the first one in a while to, you know, win the Super Bowl off of with such a high percentage of the team's salary. It just doesn't happen. I remember having talks with people for so long, going back like, oh, like once the quarterbacks started getting ridiculous money, it was always, oh, look at all these quarterbacks. It was after they went to the Super Bowl, they got paid and then they fell off. And you saw Mahomes the second year when they got lit up by Tampa Bay, it was because they had no offensive line. They couldn't bring guys back because they didn't have the money to pay them, and that hurts. Like it when these quarterbacks are the most important. It's the most important position on the field, so you got to pay them. But if you pay them too much, you can't bring other important aspects around. And so I'm hoping they can work something out to make that a little bit more reasonable. Um, But
Yeah,
he even if he gets the second highest paying, first highest, he went out and he earned it this season.
yeah. And look, Howie Rose. If there's one guy that I trust doing this, it's Howie Roseman. I mean, the incentives alone will be hopefully enough to keep the deal a team friendly deal. Where look, if you make it to the Super Bowl, if you win the Super Bowl, you're gonna get paid like you just won the Super Bowl in
Mm-hmm.
incentives. But like the amount of endorsements this guy's gonna get, like Jalen Hurts will be fine. Like
He's a
there's not,
lovable guy too, and that's going to
yeah,
help him with the endorsements. Yeah.
yeah. So well, I mean that's obviously a topic for when that comes around, and that's when you can say, "Oh my God," or "Wow." You can just have your reactions when that comes around. But as of right now, we're not even a week from losing in the Super Bowl, and there's still like it's kind of like when the Phillies lost. When the Phillies lost, boom, right into the off season. Trey Turner was a Philly within like 10 days of us losing the World Series. So
Not
this
just
stuff, yeah. So I mean, when you really look at it, like now that the Eagles are over, you got a little bit for the draft, but free agency is going to be coming around very shortly. That's what happens when you make it to the very end of the season. You get going right back into it, right over
Mhm.
all over again, and that's kind of why we're still talking about the Eagles. It's so fresh in our minds. Like, how can you not talk about what Jalen Hurts just did, and just overall a great season from the team. It didn't end the way we wanted it, obviously, but it was a great year, and the Super Bowl was a great Super Bowl, win or lose. I mean, as a football fan, that was one of the best Super Bowls that we've seen in a long time.
We should just keep getting there because apparently we have a knack for that. I mean, hell, the Super Bowl 52 was such a great game. It's just do it for the NFL. They love it. Let's keep getting the birds back in the bowl because it's great. It's great for the league, right? Yeah, that's what I'll tell them when they're writing up their script. It's all about the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Um, I guess when you're talking about the game, we it was hard not to touch on it when we were kind of getting started here, but I guess we can go right into the second half defensive performance. Um, just absolutely atrocious all around. But let's start with the pass rush. I think that's kind of the first step when you talk about why we struggled. Um, and I think there's a few factors in it. I don't want to complain about something that wasn't in our control, but I think it starts with the field. It came down to both teams noticed there was a problem with the field and we didn't adjust. Um, we've had so much success this year being able to just send four of our guys and say go get the quarterback. Um, but when that wasn't working, Gannon didn't dial up anything creative enough, in my opinion, to try and change that. And it gave Mahomes a lot of time to move around back there. And ultimately, what we'll get to was pepper the secondary and make them look really, really bad. Um, so kind of just what are your thoughts on that and how the lack of pass rush ultimately led to you know 38-point game.
Look, 70 sacks. I mean, that's all I really have to say. 70 sacks. I mean, we were third all time in sacks for a season, and when you can't get to the quarterback, and when a main focal point of your defense cannot adjust and do their job, well, our linebackers weren't the greatest in coverage. Our cornerbacks were obviously not as good as we thought they were. And, you know, when you can't get to the quarterback and when a guy like Patrick Mahomes has basically all day because they didn't touch him once. And when he did, a guy on one ankle was running all over them, getting the first down. And the one time he did get touched, he got hurt. So
Yeah,
when you can't hit the quarterback, when your defensive line, when Sweat, Reddick, Graham, Fletch, uh, all of them, when they're not getting to the quarterback, whether it's the field or whether it's not, I don't care. You didn't get to him, and that was you can't give a guy like Patrick Mahomes time, infinite time. You can't do it because he's going to make you pay. And the way he made you pay was you losing in the Super Bowl. So I can't. I don't know why it happened that game. Was it the field? Was it just what? Are we not giving enough credit to the Chiefs O line? Were they truly just like able to stop a guy that had 16 and a half sacks all year, and Hargrave and Fletch and BG, and like the one thing that this Super Bowl was missing was a defensive stop, was a defensive turnover. That's what they got in 2017, and that's what they didn't get this year, and that turned out to be the difference maker. Couldn't get to the quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, looking back on all the games this year, there's only 3 games where we had less than 2 sacks. You had one against Detroit in week 1, you had one against Arizona, and then you had none against Dallas the first time we played them. That was week 6. All before week 6. After week 6, we had at least 2 sacks in every single game.
Yeah.
It's really something where you look at and you're like, yeah, like you want to give credit to, give credit to the Chiefs offensive line. Good for them. They want to go home making their t-shirts. Oh, I'll put that on a t-shirt. Good job. You had 0. Like there was 1 sack the whole entire game, and it was Jalen Hurts, rushing out of bounds by like half a yard. All honestly, I thought it was a bad spot. I thought he got over it, but they called it. They said he was behind the line. That was the only sack in the game. Put that on a t-shirt. Like it's this field was so bad that the Chiefs were blitzing nonstop, still couldn't get a sack. It was not a game for defenses. And I'm sorry, congratulations. I that bothered me a little bit, the put it on a shirt thing. I'm like, look, congratulations. I mean, they've had some interesting ways to celebrate their win. Juju calling out Bradbury after he already admitted it was a hold. It was a little unprofessional in a lot of ways, if you ask me. But yeah, everyone was talking about how good our pass rush was, and yeah, I understand that you don't let up any sacks. You're gonna want to pop your chest out and say, "Look at us, we didn't allow any sacks." But I'm telling you, it wasn't because you were that good. It was because of the field, and ultimately, we have to adjust. And there's that whole conversation. But yeah, I'm sorry, one of the best pass rushes in NFL history can't get to the quarterback. I'm sure there's a reason other than your subpar, offensive line having a good game. So there's a lot to that. And I think what we'll get into next, it ultimately led to a poor secondary performance. But other than that, yeah, I think one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, was not adjusting. It was talked about a lot, little things like, players changing their cleats, whatever. I think the issue was Gannon there. I haven't really been a Gannon hater all year. I think when you lead one of the best defenses in the NFL, there's only so much trouble you can get. There's really no reason. You can be a little bit critical, but there's no reason to really bash on him when you have this kind of defense. But this game was a game you needed to convince people you were a good coordinator. When we had historic numbers for a 4-man pass rush getting to the quarterback, and you not being able to make that happen and not adjust to it. Like, I'm sorry, dial up some blitzes, man. It's been your biggest problem since you got here. And yeah, you didn't need to do it, all year, but how about you do it in the maybe biggest game of the season? First half, you guys can't get to the quarterback. There's a reason for that, because you mainly get your success when your guys are coming around the edge. It wasn't happening. Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham were falling every time they went to rush the quarterback. You had to start sending some more stuff on up the middle. You had to start sending some stunts, and they were not doing it. And that's all on Gannon. He left his secondary out to dry, and that hurt. That hurt really bad, because guess what? That's what the Chiefs were doing. That's why it was, but why are you complaining so much? They both were playing on the same field. That's why it was a problem, because they had a defensive coordinator that was sending the house, making Jalen Hurts move around, and not needing 2 guys to take wide turns to get to the quarterback. I'm sorry. Have you walked on grass before? At that speed, that kind of turn's not easy to make when you don't have good grass. It was a situation where we needed to be a little bit more creative, and I think, yeah, obviously that was because of the field conditions, but the Chiefs had a game plan that made it work with those field conditions, and we didn't adjust to it. And I think that was probably the number one issue with the defense with that game.
Yeah, and look, that's always been Gannon's problem is he can't adjust. He's never been able to do it. He doesn't do it. He refuses to do it. And there were so many people last year that wanted Gannon gone, and they gave him another chance. And then at the end of the Niners game, he's like, "Oh, I'm not going anywhere." And he knew that this might be his only chance as a defensive coordinator to actually get a head coaching job. You're coming off a Super Bowl year where you lost in the Super Bowl by 3 points. Dude, he's a defensive coordinator, and that team just gave up 31 defensive points. I mean, besides that touchdown, the defense let up 31 points.
And even though that, that punt return, it didn't get in, it technically still is on the defense. You could have made a stop. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, that was the no, that wasn't the first fake jet, right?
Wasn't that the second one where they went to the opposite side to Sky Moore, or was that the Tony?
I'd have to double check. I didn't think it was either of them, but if it was, I think it was the Tony. But yeah, it would, ultimately, yeah, that's 31 points. You got to come up with a few more stops than that.
One more stop, you win that game.
My biggest problem with it too was our offense was on the field for a long time. That was a well-rested defense we were putting on the field, and they couldn't get the job done. I mean, yeah, the time of possession numbers are a little off because of that Hurts fumble. But nonetheless, it doesn't mean you were on for any. It's like, no, those numbers are still true though. It's you only had that much time on the field, and you weren't able to be well rested enough. We have one of the best rotational teams in the NFL, and with that rotation on top of the fact we were barely on the field, you guys didn't have enough juice to get the job done. It's all over the place. There's a few factors, but it's really crushing that, something that I saw as such a strength coming into the season, something that proved to be a great success during the season, ultimately was our demise in the biggest game all year.
Yeah. And look, the game plan, one of my biggest things was going into the Super Bowl, keep Mahomes off the field, kill that clock, run, and they did that. We led the game of possession, and we let the defense just relax. And I just don't. There was just no adjustment. It didn't matter if they rested, because when you run it, I mean, how many times do we see this in sports? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, Gannon ran the same 4-man blitz every time, expecting a different result, even when the players were slipping and sliding all over the field for 3 quarters. Like, you needed one stop in the fourth quarter, you win that game. You couldn't do it because they were slipping everywhere. You still ran the same play. And, when Juju and Kelsey and their backup tight end just sit wide open in the middle of the field every time.
Yeah. Yeah, jumping back a little bit too. It was jumping back a little bit. You were right. The punt return led to the Sky Moore touchdown. So I mean, that's something where even that punt return, they showed you the same exact play. They came out and said they lined up wrong. They were in the wrong formation. Mahomes called out for Tony to move, and Tony points back to him and says, "Wrong side. It's over there." They messed it up, and we still couldn't defend it. So it's like, it was, we would have to get more information with that. Who knows if that's a, problem with the players, if that was a coaching problem. I personally cannot believe we ran as much zone coverage in the middle of the field as we did. It seemed like we were completely reversed. We're running zone coverages while they're in the middle of the field, they're getting wide open, just sitting in the middle of nowhere. And then we get to the red zone within the 5-yard line, and we're like, what we should do? We should run man in here. And that's what they do. They send it over. Guys are running all over the place in the defensive backfield. And getting wide open touchdowns. I mean, I'm sorry. You can one wide open touchdown is bad enough in the Super Bowl. Two on the same exact play. That is embarrassing. It
And
was
it was back-to-back
embarrassing.
possessions.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened on back-to-back offensive drives.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one set up within the 5 because nice tackling, guys. But can't happen. You have to play perfect against Patrick Mahomes. It was
Yep.
bad enough. You could have been up 17. You were up 10 at halftime. You get one stop in the second half. They scored every time they touched the ball. You get one stop in the second half, and we're not doing this right now. We're on Broad Street.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing a podcast right now, just talking about what should have went right, what didn't go right. We would be on Broad Street partying, and instead we're not because you have no adjustment, and that's what's been the killer every single time that Gannon it falls under Gannon so much because when the main point of the defense, which was the sack all year, when it doesn't work, there's absolutely no adjustment ever, and there never has been. And
that's
God bless Arizona, but
and that's why I'm excited to see what they do. Looking for a new defensive coordinator. I mean, listen, good ones don't just grow on trees. I mean, I was a believer that Jim Schwartz was better than Philly gave him credit for. Him, a few little things that we didn't like about him, we sent him out of town. It's not easy to get a good defensive coordinator. So I'm not saying, hey, Gannon's gone, we're going to bring in this stud. We got to go find someone. I think it's a little bit different for our offensive coordinator, which we might get into. I think we've set ourselves up for a pretty good situation over there. But I think you're still going to have good personnel coming into next year. You lose Gannon, but I think you should. It's a very attractive job. I mean, people are going to want to coach a team that has hopefully Javon Hargrave back, Hassan Reddick, Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis, Darius Slay. Like this is a very attractive job right now. I'm coming off a tough Super Bowl loss. So I'm excited to see kind of who they bring in and who they're looking at for this position. But yeah, hopefully they like blitzing. Like I didn't think I'd need to pray for a defensive coordinator that every now and then would be like, what we should do? We should send another guy. Like, come on now. But that's the point we got to, and I can only imagine how scary this defense could be when you're sending more than just 4. So,
especially when you have Nakobe Dean who can fly through one of those holes.
That should have been the hashtag at halftime: send more than 4. But it's whatever. A lot of points let up. There's a few things we get. I think I don't have too much I want to cover with the secondary outside of the holding call. So we can get to that real quick. I think most of the secondary problems were them just not expecting to have to cover for as long as they were, as well as coverage calls. It's easy to blame the coverage and not the players. I don't put any I'm not letting them off the hook, but I think those were kind of where your serious problems were. So we'll kind of get into that. The call made around the world where everyone kind of, at first at least put the game on that, before they kind of sat back and really analyzed the game. What did you think about that call on that spot?
Look, I've seen enough sports in my 21 years of life. I've played enough sports in my 21 years of life. And although I've never played at the professional level and never will, you can't make a call like that with less than 2 minutes in a Super Bowl. Regular season, fine, whatever. Bad call. Super Bowl, I mean, come on. You can't do that. It's so what if Bradbury said he held him? You weren't calling it all game. You didn't call the one on Juju earlier when that actually was a hold.
Yeah.
It was more of a hold than that one. And, you just can't make that call. And, obviously you had that refing crew with more penalties than any
Terrible.
refing
Terrible.
officiates. Like,
They were awful the last couple times they had the Super Bowl too. It's just it's
how do
I
you allow it to happen? I
yeah.
don't. I don't get it.
I agree. I think like regular season game, you can look at that and say, oh, I wouldn't have called it because I think it was ticky tacky, but I could see how you call it a penalty. I could also see how from the angle he was standing at that he sees that right because that's what they officially said. They said it wasn't the left arm, which everyone was saying that wasn't a penalty. He was looking at the right arm, which was on the far side, which he didn't have the best angle at. But guess what? If you don't have the best angle of it, probably shouldn't throw the flag. I mean, that's just my unimportant opinion, but it's something where I agree. Wasn't being called all game. That's not fair to the cornerbacks to be told, "Hey, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this," and then in the biggest part of the game, tell them you can't do this. Like, I'm sorry if I'm a teacher, I'm not telling students to prepare for an open book test, and then test comes around and I rip the books away from them and say, "Sorry, you had to memorize." Like, no, like you can't do that in the biggest stage.
Of the biggest game of the season.
Yeah, you like. I'm
Sportingly,
sorry, like I think like I don't know. It's just so tough. I've settled on the opinion of like it's a tough way to end the game. Um, I don't think. How would I word it? Probably, I don't think it's a bad call. I think it's the wrong call. Like I don't think it's. I've heard a lot of people also say like, oh, it's just because it's the end of the game doesn't mean you shouldn't call a penalty. And I understand that point of view. Like, yeah, a penalty, you should call a penalty. It doesn't matter if it ends the Super Bowl. If it's a penalty, it's a penalty. But I don't think it was. I don't think it was that bad. I think it was. The ball was overthrown. I'm sorry,
and that's a yeah,
Juju's no Tyreek Hill. He ain't running to that ball.
no
I
shot.
mean, he's. I just think it was something where it was like, wow, like are us being biased, you want to say, yeah, it would have been nice to see Jalen Hurts get the ball with a minute and a half and have him the ball in his hands. I'm sure the NFL would have rathered that, but ultimately, the flag was thrown. It's not what lost us the game. It was just the end of the loss. Um, but I'm telling you, it made it sting a little bit more. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
it, just the thought of like, wow, like penalties are awful. They suck. They
they're the
just
worst part of any sport.
when your team commits a penalty and at any time on a big drive, but let alone to lose you a game, it stings because it's like wow, like you almost wish it was like okay, penalty, replay that down. Like you wish like it stinks that it's like all right, that's gonna lose you the game. Not saying it shouldn't, but it's just one of those things that kind of hurts a little bit more. But that's kind of where I view that call. I don't think it was the right time to make it, as does most of Philly. Um, I don't blame it for the loss, but I think you know refing in the NFL and in any league isn't easy. Um, but if you're not calling that all game,
Can't call it then.
can't
Now we're
call it
at
then.
57 seconds left.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
it's I don't know, man. And
yeah.
you have to think. Do they call that if it's the other way around? If McDuffie just did the little contact that Bradbury did with
Yeah. Who
Juju,
knows? I mean,
if McDuffie does that to AJ Brown, do they call that?
yeah. You don't know if it's a Patrick Mahomes call if they're saying, "Hey,"
Because
but
there was a couple Patrick Mahomes calls to get him into the Super Bowl.
yeah. Hey, and that's not what's helping their look right now. With after what had happened in that Bengals game, it's not a good look for the officiating crews. I mean,
No,
they're all
and
kind of riding Mahomes right now.
yeah, I mean, look, it happened. You knew that Mahomes was going to get a call in that game. You just knew that was going to happen.
I mean, come on, Mahomes is the greatest player in the league. How about and Travis Kelsey is the greatest tight end in the league. How about instead of ending the game on a call, you go and you do a best to the best. You try. I'm going to give you my best, and we're going to see if it's good enough to win us this Super Bowl. It would have been easier for me to handle. I mean, but
Yeah.
that's obviously not what the Chiefs or Andy Reid are considering when they're trying to win a Super Bowl. What Tim thinks and what would make him sleep better at night. But I just think it's a tough way to end it. But as we have discussed a lot about, it's not even close to the reason we lost the game.
No.
Um,
You ended up 38 points.
yeah,
You can't do it.
yeah. Before I get into my next topic, is there anything else defensively that you wanted to cover?
Mainly just run defense. That was even a struggle. And maybe again it was the field, but Isaiah Pacheco looked like Reggie Bush at
He,
UC. He
yeah,
was balling all night.
yeah. And I mean, I mentioned this to you before we hopped on here, like that watching Pacheco run was the first time in that game where I sat back and I was like, we might lose this game. And that's something when you want to talk about should Miles Sanders be our running back for the next year? I need that guy. I need a guy who, when you hand him the ball,
You're going to
yeah, he's gonna run heavy. He was terrifying to watch run. As soon as he broke through a hole, I was like, he's gonna go all the way. I mean, Gardner Johnson had a few great tackles on him that really saved us. He had the one where if he had gotten by him, it was over, and he was taking it to the house. But ultimately, like, yeah, I think a lot of that, the run defense really underperformed. It was a talking point midway through the season, and then really hadn't been an issue for a while. But man, that's when hats off to the line and hats off to Pacheco, because he really balled out. He really showed up for the biggest game of the year. So kudos to him. He's really going to be a stud moving forward. Hopefully, we don't have to see him a lot, but
we'll have to see him next year too.
Yep.
Maybe twice.
Yep, maybe twice. So that's not.
Who knows how good the Chiefs are going to be. No.
Yeah. But yeah, after that, we talked about it a little bit before too, so that's kind of why I want to lead into this. The special teams. I mean, what do you think of the decision to bring Sipas back for the Super Bowl? Do you have any opinions on that?
The only thing I can actually say on Sipas was, one, dude hasn't played since when the Giants.
Maybe the Bears? Was it the Bears?
It was either the Bears or the Giants the first time. Whenever it was, it was like before Christmas.
Yeah.
So months ago. I think that you got a little too comfortable with having Sipas back. 4th and 2 in the fourth quarter. When does Nick Sirianni punt that ball?
Yeah, definitely some questionable 4th down decisions. There wasn't a whole lot where I sat at and looked at and thought he was making the wrong decision at the time. A few of them didn't end poorly. But yeah, that it was definitely a question. And like you said, when does he do that? Rarely. I mean, I think we've gone for more 4th downs this year than we've punted. It's what got us to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's the staple of Nick Sirianni, and yeah, it's very questionable. And when you don't have a good punter, you don't have a good special teams unit, that will lead to your decision every now and then. And as much as people thought all year, we're talking too much about the punter, we're talking too much about special teams, yada yada, kind of came back to bite us a little bit. And that's why we talk so much. That's why we kind of overanalyze every little thing, because ultimately it came down to really being a problem in the Super Bowl.
Look, people don't like to listen to Philly sports fans talk because we're right. Because we know when something is going to happen, or we just know these things because we care. So when we say Brett Kern sucks, and when Sipas, he wasn't the greatest punter last year. He was definitely not the greatest punter this year. And, going for it on 4th down was kind of the bread and butter of this team. And that 92% of the time, that's all everybody kept saying around the city. When it's 4th and 2, why aren't you going for it? I get it. You're in your zone. You're on your half of the field. Super Bowl, 4th quarter. You punt that ball. even if you don't get it, you push them back further than where they got anyways.
Yeah, and another thing was that defense was playing so poorly that normally it's a situation where like, oh, I trust the way our defense is playing right now. I don't like the situation we're in. Let's give them the ball and then trust our defense. No, I was not trusting our defense in that situation. They had not been playing well. It, yeah, you don't expect the punt to be that bad. I mean, it was an awful punt. We're no hang time, no distance. It was really just like, wow. And then the coverage. I mean, watching that punt back. I mean, it was.
It was
You saw the picture. You had 4 or 5 guys right in front of Tony.
And all guys that have been so good all year.
Yeah. I mean, guys, a guy that we just gassed up in our last video, TJ Edwards, he was the biggest problem with that. He was, we had 3, 4 guys right in front of him, and TJ Edwards is that guy on the outside. He's the guy that has to make sure that Tony does not cut back and go up through the middle. And guess what he does? He cuts back, goes right through the middle. TJ Edwards overcommits to the sideline, and there's nobody there. Then you have Sipas after an awful punt chasing after Kadarius Toney. Like it was just awful coverage. I mean, I've never been a big fan of Michael Clay. I don't think you'll find someone in Philly who is. He really hasn't done anything special. We've never had anything really creative with our kick returns. Our kick returns, a great kick return is getting it to the 35 for us. I mean, we really haven't seen anything special from that unit all year, or last year, to be fair. And
Covey's okay, but
yeah,
Covey's nothing special.
yeah. But I mean, you're looking at that. I don't know if it was the design. I think most of it is more of a player error. I think if TJ Edwards is watching that inside, that doesn't happen. But it was just a lot of players just standing flat-footed. It was guys who were waiting for Tony to just run into their arms, and it's not what happened. And I'm sorry, when you're in the Super Bowl, you can't expect that to happen.
Yeah, this isn't Pee Wee football where somebody's just going to run into you because, no, this is the Super Bowl. Kadarius Toney was always known to be like a shifty player coming out of Florida, just couldn't stay healthy. Well, when he's healthy, so what he did. He had a 55-plus yard return to the 5, and then he scored. So, in the Super Bowl, a guy that was on the Giants who did literally nothing ever against us because he was always hurt, he goes in the Super Bowl and he beats us. I mean, he could have single-handedly been the reason why we lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
If you really think about it. Scoring a touchdown, 55-plus yard return. It was only 55-plus yards because it was a terrible kick.
Yeah.
So, just sucks, man.
Yeah.
Going back and, recapping this whole game, there was more mistakes than people the average fan is going to say, "Oh, that was a bad call. You don't call that." Breaking it down, bad punt return, bad D-line.
It was literally bad everything. It just nothing good was happening.
The only good thing was the offense and Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and AJ Brown because the run game wasn't good besides Hurts either. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they and again, maybe it was the grass. I don't know. But, I mean, to go into that, I'll just stick out one of the main play, the fumble. 2 plays leading to that fumble. Kenny Gainwell, it's third and two? It was 2nd and 2. Kenny Gainwell gets the ball, runs it to the left, slips. Okay, now it's 3rd and 1. You line up for the sneak. Sam Malu jumps. Okay, move it back. 3rd and 6. Jalen Hurts gets it. The ball is now in his hands. He drops it. Who knows if it was slippery or not? I couldn't tell you. I wasn't there. But
that was another big problem with that play that people don't really talk about with that fumble. Should have been a first down. Never should have been the situation. Shouldn't have jumped. Gainwell, if the field wasn't crap, Gainwell would have been able to get that first down. There's a lot that goes down. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was thinking a lot about the field during that fumble, and I couldn't remember why because I knew that wasn't the reason he fumbled, but I remember blaming the field for that fumble, and that was why because Gainwell should have had the edge on that run.
He would have been gone.
Yeah,
he might have broken that.
Yeah,
and at that point in the game, we would have been up 14 points.
Yeah,
and then we actually did get a stop the next possession, or we got the ball back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they got the fumble six.
Hmm.
But it can't happen.
Yeah.
It can't happen. And there's not a lot of offensive mistakes that I feel like the Eagles made. Again, I can't even call the Gainwell slip a mistake. The only person that really like it sticks out to me that did not play well at all, and maybe he just wasn't given the opportunity because of he went into the locker room in the first quarter after getting lit up on the first play and fumbling it out of bounds, and then dropping that catch that could have resulted in another fumble six, and they were pretty lucky that it didn't. Was Miles Sanders
Yeah.
did not have the greatest game on his last game, most likely as an Eagle.
Hmm.
He had a very forgetful game
Only
where
7 carries, really just wasn't
yeah,
a big part of the offense.
and it's not like he broke one. Like you've
Yeah.
seen Miles Sanders in the past, he's broken 30-yard rushes to put us in the field goal range
Hmm.
or just keep the offense on the field, and he was just non-existent.
Yeah. And the only other guy on offense, yeah, was Quez with that drop. I mean,
Yeah,
he
Quest.
doesn't get a whole lot of opportunities. They've been giving Pascal a lot more snaps,
And
just because he's a better run blocker and more reliable receiver at this point. But man, Quez is such an explosive player. You were hoping this year he would take off and make stuff, but he's made two of the biggest mistakes. And I think we discussed that earlier, so
and
won't
it's
get
not like
too much
he's
into
like
that. But
it's not like he can block like Pascal either.
yeah,
Like Pascal is a great
yeah,
block,
and that's why Pascal deserves every snap he gets over him
but
completely.
Quest was unplayable
Yeah,
at times.
it's a shame. I was really high on him coming out of the draft, and he showed a lot. I was really excited for him, and hey, hopefully he bounces back. I mean, he's still on the team. He's still
Still
gonna
on the rookie
go out and
year.
give it his all. I mean, talent's talent. He's got it. He's explosive, and he's just got to get some stuff figured up upstairs. And I'm rooting for him. He's a good guy, and
Look,
ultimately, could help us a lot. Moving forward. So
he needs to know that he is that slot.
yeah,
He's not a outside receiver. He
yeah,
needs to be the slot. He
yeah,
has the speed for the slot. He needs to be that. And there's times where he will be open down the field. It's happened multiple times, and he has failed on two of them.
yeah.
I mean, in the Super Bowl and against Washington, that's all you think of. I mean, the three times you think of Quez Watkins is week two against Minnesota, wide open down the field, and that's
Mhm.
because you have so much focus on Goddard,
Yeah,
Smith, and AJ, and you can just bust one for a 55-yard touchdown, and then you have that catch against Washington at home, week nine. You
which at
catch,
least he made the catch. Like that was just a whole thing. Makes the catch, gets up, fumbles. That was just so like we've seen a lot with like when we had Hightower just dropping balls wide open down the field, Aguilar dropping balls. Like at least Quez, it's not often he does what happened in the Super Bowl, but he's made a couple mistakes that have really hurt him.
yeah, and
But
that's
why? Yeah, but while we talk about receivers, we might as well change the mood a little bit. Talk about something really, really good. Man, dude, are we lucky to have AJ and Devontae Smith? Just absolutely terrific performances. Would have been even better if the NFL knows what a catch is, and Devontae was able to make that grab. It's a different game if he does because we don't end up scoring on that drive at the end of the first half. Um, but man, like these guys, so good. AJ Brown, what a tough touchdown catch. I mean, just for him to be tied up with those guys and him come out and make that catch. What a beautiful ball, beautiful catch. It's just when you made that trade for AJ Brown, that's what you were envisioning. Just like when you signed Bryce Harper, you were envisioning him and winning a game against San Diego to send you to the World Series. That's why you went and you traded for AJ Brown. You wanted him to go up, make a big play in the Super Bowl, and there was no better way to start off that game than a big play to AJ Brown. And there's gonna be so much more with him and Devontae next season. I can't wait for it. I think you got to pair these two up for the long term. I think this could be something really, really special brewing in Philly.
yeah. Look, I've watched Devontae since he caught the ball against Georgia to to win the national championship at Alabama. Um, obviously, we all know that meme of DK Metcalf in the weight room with his shirt off and
Yeah.
flexing. The guy next to that is AJ Brown, by the way. So, we have two guys that have been beasts since college. Heisman Trophy winner in Devontae Smith. He was picked 10. Don't know how AJ went all the way to the second round. I mean, realistically, we could have DK, AJ, and Devontae.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just thinking about how those two fell in that draft just blows my mind crazy.
Yeah.
But speaking like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, it's like thunder and lightning. It's like peanut butter and jelly. It's a perfect combination
Some
of
elite duos being listed right here. And
yeah,
AJ Brown, Devontae Smith right at the top of them.
yeah, definitely. Like
Yeah.
it's so good. It makes perfect sense. You have a guy that is elite at with his footwork on the sidelines and ability to make the catch going up top, even though he's not the biggest guy. He's not as big as AJ Brown. He's
Yeah.
not. He's not as tall as him. He's not as big as him. But he'll go up and he'll make a catch and he'll put both feet down and catch that ball.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing in the Super Bowl and then somehow that's not a catch.
Yeah.
But
Whatever.
and then AJ Brown, you have a guy that can just go up and moss you. Like he'll go up, he's fast, he can, change directions. He had a fumble problem like twice this year, but that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, like how many deep balls to AJ Brown that were from this year that connected that were attempted last year with Jalen Rager?
Yeah.
It is night and day
Yeah.
with when you have a elite wide receiver duo than just one elite wide receiver.
Yeah. It's big, and it's really really special. You mentioned being able to moss people. Throw in Dallas Goedert. He had a couple big catches in the Super Bowl. Maybe not as big of a role as we would have hoped for, but that's another guy. I mean that's if I'll tell you if you six catches for 60 yards. He had himself a little game there. If you can get the most out of Quez Watkins, you can have one of the most elite passing games in terms of how well rounded you would be. You got your big guy in AJ Brown, you got your safety blanket in Dallas Goedert, another partial safety blanket, but also toe tapper and Devontae Smith being able to make the field a couple yards wider by him being able to stretch on the sideline. You got your guy who's going to spread the field wide open with Quez Watkins. I mean, and a dynamic quarterback in Jalen Hurts. I mean, if they were able to figure this out, they have something really special moving forward. And I mean, this defense, I guess you would say, was probably the highlight of this year and was why the team was so special, just because some slight offensive inconsistencies rather. But they have a chance to be really, really special. And I think it showed in that game. Take whatever you want from any other game of the season. I care about what you show when the lights are the brightest. And man, did those two ball out.
Yeah. I mean, we all knew that they were going to be special in the beginning. Live practice, FaceTiming each other, being best friends.
Mm-hmm.
They both of them and Jalen. Devontae, AJ, and Jalen, they all had chemistry already going into the year. And matching them up together is, like I said, it's match made. It's insane.
I think Howie's done a lot of good things. That might be at the top, though.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people talk about drafting Jalen, how maybe that didn't look so great in the beginning. I didn't mind it. I at the time I was running the belief that, listen, if because that was right after Carson got hurt in that Seahawks game. I was the believer, listen, our first two picks that round were the top two reasons we lost that game. Wide receiver, Jalen Rager, backup quarterback, Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's the reason they lost the game against the Seahawks. We didn't have a good enough backup quarterback, and we didn't have good receivers. They addressed them both in the first two rounds. So a lot of people were still against it because they were like, "Oh, you're not drafting Jalen to be the quarterback." Well, who knows at this point? But it sure worked out, and that's all we care about. It's. I think that AJ Brown, Devontae Smith was one of the best moves Howie has been able to make, because I mean none of them were easy. You had to trade some decent picks to go get AJ Brown, and you had to go make a tough move to go up and get Devontae Smith. I mean, you had to trade with your number one rival to go steal him from another rival. I mean, there's some ballsy moves there by Howie Roseman, and it's really paid off, and it almost won you a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and you got to think with these three, Goddard, hopefully Quez, who knows at running back in that O line. I mean, this offense is going to be elite for as long as they can stay healthy. They will be elite together. And, you know, just Devontae Smith alone. I mean, he AJ Devontae, they have that dog mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Devontae Smith, you knew he was hurt. I mean, as soon as he went down, I knew he was hurt.
Yeah.
And it says after the game that he's in a walking boot. Well, the guy
still balled out.
past the next quarter, so it didn't really matter that much. AJ Brown still, almost had 100 yards in the Super Bowl and a touchdown. It just, this team is going to be good. Like, if you really think about it, there's not another quarterback in the NFC right now that really can compete. Like, I don't know. I really don't know, especially if Aaron Rodgers leaves the NFC. How many quarterbacks are better than Jalen Hurts?
Well, I think that's what you really look at the team, which we'll go into a lot in future videos. With this team, what this team's going to be looking up, stacking against other teams moving forward. I mean, your best quarterbacks in this conference might be the young guys that are getting drafted this year. I mean, it's there's some talent out there. I mean, Dak Prescott is, he's no joke in the regular season. He could do a job. I mean, he's always going to end up choking when you need him the most, so you don't have to worry about him going forward too much. But like, he's still going to give you trouble. He plays really well against us, so that's always a struggle. You guys, hopefully, fingers crossed, the Giants lock up Daniel Jones, because he had like 3 good games, and they're like, he's our quarterback. Like, thank you, Daniel, for being good for a couple games, so you can convince that franchise to lock you up. And then you got Goff. I really like the Lions this year. They were a fun team to pay attention to. So you can see what'll happen with them. But you're right. There's not a lot of guys in this conference that you're looking at and saying, wow, like Jalen's going to have to compete with them. I mean, 1 o'clock Kirk Cousins. Other than that, nobody. Like,
time zone playoffs are primetime football games.
Mm-hmm. So don't got to worry when you get to the run.
Yeah. Let up 7 points to.
Yeah.
So, it sucks losing. The bright side is that we have Jalen Hurts and not Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
Saying we have a 24-year-old instead of a 45-year-old.
This is only the beginning. It's not the end. So that's what's really, really exciting.
The future is bright. We have 2 first-round picks this year. We now, I'll go into our next topic here. Coordinators. You now have Brian Johnson, who's probably going to be your OC if he isn't already.
He definitely should be. That's the move. That's the move that needs to be made, and I'm 99.5% confident it will be. So I'm excited about that.
If you get Brian Johnson as your OC, a guy that has known Jalen Hurts since he was a kid, who is, who knows? That's just another level of chemistry added to your quarterback. You now have his best friend, from when they were younger in A.J. Brown. You have, one of his great teammates at Alabama. You have, Goddard and even Calcaterra. He was on that Oklahoma team.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're adding, and the chemistry with him and Nick. And now you have Brian Johnson as his OC running the plays. He knows what he does. He knows what he's good at. The dude's known him since he was like 5 years old. like Steichen, yeah, it sucks losing him. He led a great offense. Gannon, you kind of sucked in the Super Bowl, but other than that, you were solid all year. At least the D line was enough for you to get a head coaching job in Arizona. I don't know who we're going to get defensive coordinator wise. I've been seeing Anthony Lynn a couple times over this hour that we've been talking.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing Vic Fangio, but that's obviously not happening. He's with the Dolphins now.
What I was thinking about this. What another absolute disappointment. I mean, the reports coming out that he was helping us out, and to no avail. Whatever he did, it sure didn't work.
That's why he's never beaten the Chiefs as a DC in Denver.
Yeah,
but
wasn't the best decision.
So you really think about it, the future is bright. You're getting Brian Johnson as your OC, probably. Nick Sirianni is not even 4 years old yet, and now you're who knows what type of. What I personally hope is I hope you get a veteran defensive coordinator for this team that knows how to really, take advantage of what he has in front of him.
Because he's got a lot.
Yeah, I mean it's a very attractive job to be a coach or an offensive coordinator or a coordinator at all for this Eagles team with guys I just said, Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown. You need a running back, but you can find a running back anywhere that can run the ball. Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th-round pick. I actually don't even know if he was drafted this year, and he's a Super Bowl champion. So you really look at it, and this team, this is not the end. This is not the end of the Brady era. This is the beginning of the Jalen Hurts era. And people are going to want to come play with Jalen Hurts, whether they're on the team now or they're going to come on the team in the future. You saw his recruitment. He got A.J. Brown here. You can't tell me he didn't. Carson Wentz wasn't getting A.J. Brown on this team. Jalen Hurts did that. Yeah. There's levels to this, and Jalen Hurts is one of those. He's one of the most likable guys, 2 players around the league. Trayvon Diggs and Micah Parsons commenting MVP. They're the Cowboys.
Our number one rival talking about how great he is. We've gotten some big Eagles haters to not necessarily root for us, but root for us to win essentially because of Jalen Hurts, and that's a big testament to the guy he is.
I mean, the sky's the limit with the player. Well, actually, the cap space is the limit to the amount of players that would want to come play here with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, agreed.
Just the way that he comes across as, he has that. I'll say it again, Mamba mentality. Like he has that Kobe Bryant, factor in him that I just want to win. I mean, some of the things he says is so 2010 Kobe like, where it's just we still have 2 games left. We didn't win anything yet. Like we could play better. We could be better. I know we could be better. Like, this is all stuff like. It's crazy. But
you don't find these guys anywhere.
Yeah.
They're special.
They don't make it. He's different.
Yeah. Well, that was most of what I got. I think in terms of the recap, maybe the only other thing I was a little disappointed in the offensive line performance. I think that had a lot to do with the Chiefs blitzing, which we did get into. But for as great as the offensive line have been, really weren't able to get anything going in the rush game aside from Jalen Hurts. So I think that was pretty disappointing. But in terms of lists, the list of problems for that game, that was pretty low for me, and not really something I would point at as, hey, that was why we lost that game.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, in terms of the recap, that's most of what I got. A tough loss, but I think one that there's a lot to learn from. We have a good core of guys that are going to still be here to know what that feeling was, and when they touch the field to start next season, they're going to have their eyes set on getting back there, which is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, and look, football season is a few months away. If you really think about it, kind of crazy. We just. Mm-hmm. Like, we'll have baseball, we'll have NBA playoffs and hockey playoffs, but once it hits April, Football's right back in full swing with the draft, and then you have free agency coming up, but it's going to be always Eagles talk in this city, no matter what happens. The team could go 0-17, and they'd still be the talk of the town.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
this goes in this city, and obviously, people watching this know that. That's why they clicked on this videos to, you know, 5 days later still listen and talk about the birds because that's what we do here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it sucks, but what can you do? Hopefully they can go back and win this time, and then I expect Jalen Hurts to really just take another leap, if that's even possible.
Yeah.
I the season that Jalen Hurts might put out this upcoming year is this could be an all time season.
It's going to be something to behold.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. And
Yeah.
we're on here February 16th. We're recording this. Come back to this video if Jalen Hurts has an all time season that ends in a Super Bowl ring, because sky's the limit with that kid. People are going to want to come here, and I hope that we're having this conversation on Broad Street next time.
I need it. I was planning on being very incoherent right now, in Philly. So it's, I'm praying for it next year, but we'll see what happens.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in to the Broad Street Boys podcast. I'm 444 Philly fan. That's Tim Talks Philly. Subscribe to both of our channels. Links will be in the description below. Thank you all again so much for watching. Go Birds. And we're out.
Take it easy, boys.